Assalamu alaikum. We are back at it. Alhamdulillah. Good to address everyone again. Hopefully, again, we are all doing well during Ramadan. We're all, inshallah, gaining from the fast. I remember hearing Sheikh Ali say last week that um, if all you get, and this is from the Prophet, ﷺ, if all you get from your fast is thirst and hunger, then it is as if you should not even be fasting. You're not really gaining what you should be benefiting from it. And inshallah, that is definitely better behavior, closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just really getting better as Muslims. Having said that, inshallah, we finally figured out or worked out the kinks involving this competition that we've been trying to do. So, what's going to happen, inshallah, every class that I give, we will have a question from that class that uh, will tally up at the end of the week. So, my class is from Monday to Thursday. At the end of the week on Thursday, we will present the questions again, and you guys will have until, let's say, Saturday to answer those questions, turn them into the email that we're going to give you at the end of the inshallah of the month of Ramadan. We will then have a random drawing for the people who got all of the questions right. So all the people who got the questions right, their names will go into like a bowl or something like that, and we will have a random drawing for those people. And basically, what will happen is they will take out we will take out your name randomly, and whoever got it right will have, for instance, first place will be $50, $50 gift card. Second place will be a $30 gift card, and the third place will be a $10 gift card. So, inshallah, that's what we're planning to do, just to reward the people who got the answers correctly. So, let's continue. We are at the end of we're coming to the last day of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the best friend of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we pick his story up today, right at the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so now there is a vacuum, if you will, of power, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was the ruler, who was the leader, who was the one who set the standards for everything, he is no longer here. And in that time of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, it was paramount. It was uh, extremely important for them that they did not go a single day without having leadership, without having someone who is responsible for them. And so when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, literally the same day, within hours, they began um, talking amongst themselves as to who should be the one that would assume leadership after the Prophet ﷺ. And we had said that in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there were little implied things that would imply to the nature that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq should be the one that takes over after the Prophet ﷺ. And we said that that was, for instance, when he made the comment to the woman who asked, if you're not here, who should I go to? He said, go to who? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Or that when it was time for Salah, who would lead the Muslims in the Salah? It was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And this is the job of the leader, the ruler, the Khalifa, if you will. So this I don't want to get into the details of how this went down because it truly in itself could be a class by itself. Thus, they ended up selecting Abu Bakr Siddiq. It was a drawn out process. He ended up being the one selected, and the general body of the Muslim Ummah gave him what is called the bay'ah, or the pledge, that they would basically hear and obey. And Abu Bakr Siddiq gave his famous inaugural speech, which also in itself can be a study that we don't really have time to get into. But he gave a great speech, a very beautiful speech, that outlined a lot of things that were to come for the Muslim Ummah. And then it is said the same day, right? Or before we get to what happened on the same day, Abu Bakr has a new title that's given to him. And this title is Khalifa to Rasulullah, meaning the successor of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the one who he's the only one that was given this particular title. And so what we have to understand and what we have to realize, right? Here's the interesting thing about all of this is that this is brand new. This is brand new for the ummah. Up until this point, if there was ever an issue, we just go to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He'll resolve the issue for us. He'll deal with the issue for us. He will, if we have something, he's our direct link to Allah subhanahu wa taala. We need not question after we ask Him, right? So now there's something new here. We can't just go to the Prophet ﷺ anymore. So Abu Bakr Siddiq is literally writing the handbook, or at least some of the beginning steps and rules as to how a ruler should rule in when the Prophet ﷺ is not around. He is the one who is spearheading this effort. And it was a very difficult thing for him to do. And we're going to get into some of those difficulties, inshallah. So now that the Prophet ﷺ is not there, you have levels of that you have to take in order to reach. For instance, if someone has an issue with something going on within the Muslim community, or someone had a dispute, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq now has to think, well, what does the ayah, what does the Quran say? Then what does the Prophet ﷺ say? And what is the consensus or the ijma' of the ummah at that time, of the scholars of the ummah at that time? What did they all say in a particular matter? And then if he cannot then still reach a judgment, then he has the right, based on Quran and Sunnah and Ijma', to come up with his own personal opinions on how to deal with things. And so this is what this is what Abu Bakr Siddiq had to deal with. He then made in his front office, when I say front office, you know how the president has, the president and the vice president, the Treasury and the Secretary of State and all these different things. So Abu Bakr had certain people that he appointed certain tasks. And he appointed Umar ibn Khattab to be basically the number two guy, the guy who's gonna, when there's problems in the ummah, when there's something that people need to do, his vice president, if you will, and any judgments that needed to be taken care of that he himself, Abu Bakr Siddiq, could not handle, Umar would then assist in those particular situations. Aside of Umar, there was the treasury, who was held by Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. And we said this is one of the individuals who was promised paradise, and so he was the one who dealt with the money of the Muslim Ummah at this time. Aside from that, you had Zayd ibn Thabit, and we're going to talk about Zayd ibn Thabit a little bit later in today's lesson. Zayd ibn Thabit was the one who was responsible for writing official documents if a letter had to go out, and Abu Bakr wanted him to send it out, or if some type of documentation of something had to be taken care of, Zayd ibn Thabit would take care of it. And so it's important to see how, even though this calamity happened to the ummah, Abu Bakr Siddiq understands the importance of organizing and being organized. He understood this. Now, there's another thing that we have to bring up about Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq, and that is his life as being now the one who deals with all the issues of the ummah. Before, he was a merchant. He traded goods in the marketplace. This is how he provided for his family. And he had more than one wife. He had several children. He had to provide for his family. And so this was happening. He can't just flee to the market anymore. Now he needs to be present for the ummah, right? So initially, they offered him 250 dirham along with pieces of a sheep to feed his family, parts of the sheep to feed his family. And so at first, Abu Bakr took this, but then it wasn't enough. And so one day, Umar comes, he's walking by, and there are this group of women who have an issue and they need to talk to the Khalifa. They want their issue to be settled by the Khalifa. And at this time, Abu Bakr Siddiq, he was available for everyone, right? But he was in the marketplace at this particular time. So Umar ibn Khattab goes to see where he could find him at, and he finds him in the marketplace, and he's a little upset. He's a little frustrated at the fact that Abu Bakr Siddiq is inside the marketplace. And he says, we need you here dealing with the issues of the ummah. And he says, look, take this responsibility as far as him being the Khalifa. Take this as something that's way too much, is asking for too much from me, where I can't take care of my family. I have needs. I have a certain lifestyle that my family has become used to. I have to keep that going for them. And so they said, what would please you? What would make you happy? And so he said, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he said, if you gave me 300 uh, dirhams, uh, and that's at the end of the year, not every like week or nothing like that, but 300 dirhams, along with the entire sheep. And Umar was like, nope, it's too much, no way. And so they brought in Ali, and Ali gave his opinion. He said, give it to him. Give it to him. We need him here. This is a service, and this is something that we really have to understand and put into perspective, right? It wasn't like he was asking to be a rich man or for people to pay his, give him this lavish lifestyle. No, just to take care of the needs of his family. And we have to understand that Islamic work. This is a lesson for us to learn that Islamic work is not something that should be done freely. Right here it is, he's doing the top of Islamic work, right? He's a Khalifa, yet and still it's understood by the Ummah that he should be taken care of so that he can focus on that deed, on that job. So if we have people who are out teaching Quran or teaching Islamic studies or holding these positions within our community that we need for the growth of our deen, we should pay those people and we should support those people. And that is something that we learn early on. So after this, uh, the next thing is we learn about how Sayyidina Abu Bakr was with the people. And there's some very beautiful stories about how he was with the people. And one of those stories consists of how Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was always constantly, he lived in this particular district of Medina, and he had these women who were, he would literally milk their animals for them. This is what he did. And he did it so much. And when he became the Khalifa, these women said, oh, they became sad. He's not going to milk our animals anymore. And Abu Bakr looked at them and he said, I will continue to do this, which he did for the next 6 months while he lived in that particular district. And he said, and he prayed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not change him because of this new position or this new status that he has, right? So he still maintained the good deeds that he was doing, even though he was now the Khalifa. This is one of the things he continued to do. So every time, so can you imagine this, right? The Emir, the leader of the Muslim Ummah, the Khalifa, Khalifatul Rasulillah, he is making time in his day to milk the animals of some ladies that need his help within his community, his district that he lived in. You know, we don't see that from our leaders. Can you imagine any of our leaders today who are in the heads of offices in different parts of the country, or our governors or our any of these people who are holding office? Can you see them hopping out of their cars to help families with things they need in their houses or things that they need, help them grocery shop or anything like that? This was Abu Bakr Siddiq. He was taking out the time to be among the people, with the people, for the people. And this is something that, inshallah, we hope will return to leadership. Aside from that, another story, Abu Bakr Siddiq, there was a woman who Umar used to take care of, a blind woman. And he would go to her, and she had little children. She was blind, and he would go to her and he would take care of things for her, like clean her house, for instance. Uh, you know, um, any animals she had, take care of those animals for her. Literally, be her servant. This is what Omar used to do. And one day he came, and Omar found that she had her house already clean. Someone already came and took care of things for her. So the question was, well, who's doing this? I was the one doing this. Who's doing this now? And so he's decided that he would come early and earlier and earlier. And every time that he came, it was already done. And so then he decided that he would hide. He would hide in the bushes and see who's this coming. This was in one narration that this happened after Fajr. And he hid and he waited and he saw that it was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And Abu Bakr left and he asked the woman, some questions about some of the services that he did for her. And some of the things that he did for this woman was literally crush the wheat, make breakfast for the kids, make breakfast for the family, clean the house, and he would stay for a while, almost until the next salah. This is what Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was doing. He was helping the community. It is said that during his reign as a Khalifa, everybody who lived within the Muslim Ummah, within the Muslim community, I want you guys to think about this for a second. Everyone who lived in it got a stipend just because you were Muslim. It wasn't anything that you were doing, you were just being Muslim. And everybody in the Muslim community, in the Muslim Ummah, got a certain amount of money given to them, however, whatever, every month, or I don't know how frequent it was, but it was on a consistent basis. And this was during the reign of Abu Bakr Siddiq. Some people came to Umar, and others came to even Abu Bakr Siddiq, and they would say to him, there are people who were Muslim way before some of these newer Muslims, and they put in way more time, way more effort, way more work for the Muslim Ummah. They should get bigger stipends than everyone else. It's a fair argument. Abu Bakr Siddiq said, as far as the deeds that they did and how long they've been Muslim, that is with Allah. Allah is the one who will reward them. So he understood and felt that it was important to give everybody the same amount, no matter who you were, no matter how long you've been in service for the deen, everybody gets the same amount. That's how just he was. Umar, when he became the Khalifa, he kind of changed this policy a little bit and he gave more depending on certain individuals. But he said later on in his life that he wished that he would have stuck to the way of Abu Bakr in the sense of giving everybody equal amounts. He wished he would have stayed with that. So again, Abu Bakr is writing the handbook of how Khalifa should be going forward rather. So these are the stories, a few of the stories that were involving Abu Bakr Siddiq. And he would also, Ayman. Ayman was a woman in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who, after the mother of the Prophet sallallahu passed away, she was kind of like his mother. She was taking care of him. She was always looking after him. She was being there for him. And the Prophet sallallahu had a lot of love for her, respect for her. And so when when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, they would visit her, check on her, make sure she was okay, make sure she was, living well and everything, and had everything that she needed. And so one day Abu Bakr Siddiq took Umar with him during his reign, and they went to go see her, and she was crying. And he said, why are you crying? The Prophet ﷺ just went back to Allah. His reward is now with Allah. He's in a better place. Inshallah. He will have better. Inshallah. And so he said, I'm not crying because of that. I'm crying because the death of the Prophet ﷺ also means that the wahi is over. That we will no longer, have Jibreel alayhi salam coming with revelation to the Prophet ﷺ. We will not have that presence anymore. And she cried because of that. And they cried along with her because of that. Beautiful stories like this that existed in this time. But unfortunately, it was not all beauty during this time. There were some difficulties, and naturally so. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just put Sayyidina Abu Bakr in the highest position that a Muslim can ever achieve, and that is to be the successor of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is not a light position. So he has to be tested. It's not going to be easy. And we know that Abu Bakr Siddiq's reign was only a little over 2 years. But here are some of the tests that he had to deal with. Immediately when he became the Khalifa, there were a group of Muslims who were coming, and they were supposed to be coming to pay their zakat. Right? They were coming supposedly to pay their zakat to Abu Bakr Siddiq. But because it's not the Prophet ﷺ, and because now people are starting to see, okay, the Prophet's not here, we're we could start doing what we want to do. They had this idea or vibe or feeling that they no longer needed to necessarily follow as diligently as they were when the Prophet ﷺ was here. And so they came and said, we're not going to pay you the zakat. We're not going to give it to you. Now we know in Islam that zakat is a pillar of Islam, that the deen rests upon 5 pillars, and one of those pillars is zakat. We know this. And so for them to refuse to pay the zakat was a very big, grave, deep mistake. It was something that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq ended up fighting wars with these people over, and the wars were called the Wars of Ridda. And these people, basically, essentially, and I want you guys to understand how difficult this is. This has never happened in the time up until this point. It's never happened in the lifetime of the Sahaba, right? So the Sahaba are thinking, these people are saying, we pray 5 times a day, we read Quran, we believe in Allah, we just don't feel like we want to give you zakat. So can you imagine how the conflict of interest, how some of the Sahaba felt, how could you fight these people? How could you go against these people when they're saying this? And this is what Umar ibn Khattab was even saying. So can you imagine the pressure that was surrounding Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? This is one of the things, one of the fitnas that he had to deal with. The other one is that when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he had an army that he set out to go fight Rome. Now, I want you to imagine this. In Medina, you have these people who are saying, we're not going to pay you zakat, and we're willing to fight you, we're willing to go against you. And so there's a sense of danger in Medina, along with the majority of the Muslim army has already started to their camp where they're preparing to leave to go fight the people in Rome for certain things. So Usama bin Zayd, who was at that time around 18 years old, he is the offspring of Zayd ibn Haritha. He is the son of Zayd ibn Haritha. And so the concern is, first of all, they didn't like the fact that this 18-year-old man was in charge of the general of an army, that they felt that they were a senior Sahabi or older Sahabi who should have had the position of general or running the army. So they already didn't like the fact that Osama was in charge of the army. And then it was the idea of the army needs to come back so that they can help protect Medina. Now, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is hearing all of this pressure, along with the people saying they're not going to pay zakat anymore to him, and all of these issues. And now they're hearing this issue about Osama, right? And so he's saying, how do you expect me not to send out an army that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself prepared? He sent out the army. How am I going to call back something that Muhammad ﷺ set in stone? So Abu Bakr had all of this pressure and people telling him and advising him, please, please, please don't do this, but he still did it anyway. And it comes out to be of the benefit of the Muslims. And the way it benefited the Muslims is, one, the Muslims won the wars against those who refused to pay zakat, and many of them ended up coming back saying that they will pay the zakat and that they will give their money to the new Khalifa as they were supposed to. And so that helped out. And also with the army of Osama that was sent out against Rome, the beautiful thing about this particular army is that Rome was hearing about all of these things happening in Medina, right? They knew what was going on. They were hearing reports. But how can the Khalifa send out an army even with all of this happening in that region? The Muslims must be powerful. The Muslims must be way stronger than we thought. Call back our armies. We do not want to preemptively strike or anything like that. Call them back. We will mess around and get obliterated. So you see how that strength and that bravery of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq led to them recalling their armies. Now, the next part, and we're running out of time really fast, so I'm going to try and be as fast as possible, are the wars against those people who claim to be prophets. There were a group of people, or a few people in the time, they came towards the end of the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ and spilled over into the reign of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And he had to deal with 4 individuals claiming to be prophets, which we know this is false, because Muhammad ﷺ is the final prophet to mankind. So we know that these people are They're liars, they're imposters. And so now he has to fight them as well. Now, I want you to think about this. His reign was only 2 years. So all of this is happening like boom, one after the other, one after the other. So, Alhamdulillah, he defeated most of them. He defeated all of them, sorry. He defeated all of them, but he ended up fighting one Musaylama Kadhab. Now, this is a very important war or scrimmage, if you will, because this war and this scrimmage led to something that's even bigger, and we're going to get to that really fast. But during this particular war, Wahshi, if you don't know who Wahshi is, in fact, that's going to be the trivia question. Who is Wahshi? I'm about to tell you who Wahshi is. Wahshi is the individual who unfortunately murdered the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hamza, in the Battle of Uhud. So in the Battle of Uhud, Wahshi murdered Hamza, and the Prophet ﷺ was. We know that Hamza was one of his favorites. Was his uncle. He loved deeply and dearly. He's called the Sayyid al-Shuhada, and so this was a huge loss for the Muslim Ummah. And then Wahshi later on, as the Prophet ﷺ became the leader that he was, and he took over Mecca, Wahshi accepted Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ was still so struck by what happened to his uncle. Because again, remember, they mutilated the body of Hamza, right? They cut out his liver, and Hind took a slice of it. It's a deep story that happened with that. If you don't know about it, you can look it up in a book called Ar-Rahiq Maktoum. But anyway, um, Wahshi became Muslim, and the Prophet ﷺ said he accepted alhamdulillah, his Islam was accepted, but Wahshi was asked to stay away from the Prophet ﷺ because the Prophet was still struck with grief. And so Wahshi looked at this opportunity to fight Musaylama Kadhab, Musaylama the liar, as being a chance to redeem himself with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by killing Musaylama. And it is said that him and another Sahabi simultaneously struck Musaylama, and they dealt the final killing blow to Musaylama. However, Musaylama dealt a lot of deaths to the Muslim Ummah. We lost many of our scholars who knew the Quran. And so this prompted questions and ideas of how will we preserve the Quran? What will happen if all of the people who memorize the Quran die? Then we face possibly losing the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, like we said about Zayd ibn Thabit, he was put in in charge of finding all of the manuscripts where the Quran was written. And in those times, they would write the Quran on shoulder bones of animals, or on tree bark, or on anything that would last, leather, whatever it is. They would write it on something that would last. And so it was his job to compile all of these writings, and they put the Quran, and they compiled it, and they put it together, and then it was held with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to his death. And then he ended up giving it to Umar. When Umar ended up giving it to his daughter Hafsa when she passed away, and Hafsa, her copy was used to create the Quran that we now read from every single day, that Uthman ibn Affan finalized and made sure that it was completely put together. And this is how our book was preserved. Alhamdulillah, nothing as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised in Quran, that this is a book that will never be changed. It will always be there. Alhamdulillah, we have it. So that's the story of why the battle between Musaylama was so severe. Last thing, and I'm going to move on to the death of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Abu Bakr then decided to take a preemptive strike against the Persian armies and the Roman armies of Asham. And he had a dream, and we'll leave with this. We'll end with this dream, inshallah. But remember the question for today. The question for today is, who was Wahshi, and what did Wahshi do? Right. So we know that Wahshi, the answer to it, so you know clearly, is that he is the one who murdered Musaylama Kadhab, the Musaylama the liar, to redeem himself for murdering Hamza ibn Abi Talib before Hamza Abdul Muttalib, sorry. So aside from that, um, so Abu Bakr Siddiq decides he wants to go and march on the lands of the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire of Ishaq. He has, or one of his companions has a dream. In this dream, the companion says that he saw Abu Bakr as-Siddiq climbing up a rough terrain with his companions, and they reached the peak of this area, and they looked out, and they're seeing this land. This land was very lush and beautiful, low plains, very beautiful. So after climbing down, they came to these lands, and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq told them that he promises them that if they fight the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is all in the dream, they fight the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he promises them uh, rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the person who was having the dream said that in the dream, Abu Bakr handed him a banner, and he went to this particular land, and in that land, the people gave him the land peacefully, and then he went back to Abu Bakr Siddiq, and he was sitting on this throne, and then he heard a voice say or call out to him that he has been successful, that Allah has made him successful, and then that voice recited to Abu Bakr Surah Al-Nasr, which is إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في الدين إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في الدين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. Right? This particular surah was recited to uh, Abu Bakr in his dream. And Abu Bakr says what the dream meant, and then we'll close with what the meaning of the dream is, inshallah. And this will be the closer of the life of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make him climb above some difficult times, which we've seen, right? So against Asham and against the Roman Empire of Asham and against the Persians, he will have a rough terrain uphill, but he will be victorious. That's what it meant when he was looking out on the peak. He will be victorious, and he will come down, and Allah will then make things easy for them. And that is what is meant about the low terrain of the lush land and the cities and the town, that they will come down to ease from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last part of the dream is that when he was sitting on his throne, this Abu Bakr said made him tear up, is that this was the end of his life, because we know that in the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, Surah Al-Nasr uh, was also revealed to him, that Al-Abbas said was the meaning of the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. So he took that to mean this for him as well. And we know that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq did not last for longer than 2 years and a half or so, close to that. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning about Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. I certainly did. This is my favorite companion. I feel like he definitely set a precedent that was really hard to follow. And he's someone that we should definitely look forward to being like. So I hope you enjoyed this. And inshallah, we'll move on to Umar Thursday. Umar is just as incredible. He is oftentimes many of everyone's favorites. So inshallah, you guys will enjoy our talk about Umar. And then Thursday, we present all four of the questions, inshallah. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Enjoy the rest of your fast. Have a beautiful iftar. Love everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Good. Alhamdulillah.